Carrie, congratulations are in order. Firstly, for Portlandia getting nominated for Best Variety Sketch Series again, but a first this year that you got nominated for directing an
Yes,
episode.
thank you.
Yeah, what was it like to get the both of those nominations?
Well, for Portlandia, I've just felt so fortunate. I mean, this was our final season. We've done 8 seasons, and we were nominated for every season except for the first, which is just such a huge feat and such an honor. And we've always just felt very lucky to be singled out by our peers and just given that vote of confidence. So yeah, only grateful for that, and certainly a good way to go out for us. And then the directing nomination, I can honestly say I was very surprised. I just, the field is very crowded, and I really love directing, and it's so much of a joy in and of itself. But to be acknowledged by the fellow Academy members was really very exciting.
Yeah, you've got like Portlandia at the Emmys. I think it's gotten over the 8 seasons, 22 nominations. And that ranges from the sketch series to writing, directing, supporting acting for Fred, to guest acting for Steve Buscemi, and then the technical sides of light production design and costumes, which you've won a couple of. I think it's 4 Emmys have been won by the show. Like outside of Saturday Night Live, I don't think a sketch series has had that kind of success at the Emmys in terms of the number of nominations and wins over such a long time. How has that ride been, the award success of the show over that time?
I think it's just something you can't take for granted. And when you go into the writing process, year after year, your goals are the same, which is to make something that feels relevant and heartfelt and funny. And with Portlandia, hopefully something that is a little bit absurd or surreal and surprises people and takes risks. And you just hope the audience is along with you. And I think the Emmy voters are a sophisticated group of people who I think really honor risk taking. And I think look for shows. Everyone knows in this industry how hard it is to do something year after year, because you know that you can't repeat yourself, even though, audiences always want the same thing. They think they want the same thing, but then they don't. So it's always a challenge, I think, for writers or directors or showrunners to really go in and sort of make things different and to kind of take leaps and to lead the audience. And I just feel like people have, I think, validated our ability to continue to push things year after year. It's been very lucky for us. And, we always just thought of ourselves, and I think this is very true. We're a small show. I mean, we operated with a small budget. We had a very small crew and a small cast. And so very surprising, and certainly not why you do it, but it really is nice to be acknowledged.
Yeah, and you talk about wanting to make it different, a show that's going on for years and years and years, and bring something fresh to it. Entering a final season of a show that you've been working on since the beginning, since day one, what are you, when you're approaching that final season, trying to get out of that last year?
I think you try to really eschew the sort of those grand, kind of nostalgic, sentimental based finales, which luckily with sketch, you don't have to do. Listen, as a fan of television, I love an ending that tugs at my heartstrings. I mean, 6 Feet Under, where they go many seasons, they bring everyone to basically their deathbed. I am a total sucker for that. But with sketch, what's nice is you don't necessarily have to do that. I mean, we had about 10 characters for whom we wanted a sense of closure, but you can do that in a variety of ways because each character sort of has its own trajectory. And in some ways, our goal was to sort of give the audience an intimation of, okay, we're putting this character down in a place they should be. It might not feel like finality, but it feels like there's a little glimmer of hopefulness for them. So we did that with some of the characters that people really are fond of. But I think, our main goal was just to just make a funny season, make an interesting season. And, with someone like Kyle MacLachlan, who plays the mayor, he's played it since season 1. We had him have a moment where he actually hands the mayorship over to someone else. So yeah, there were little moments of closure, but we didn't want to have everyone die or everyone get married or everyone end up having a bunch of children. We were like, let's just give each person just a little bit of a send-off without being too on the nose about it.
And what was the last scene that you shot?
Well, that's what's strange about filming, is because you think it's going to be some grandiose scene that speaks to your entire experience. Like it's the New Year's Eve of filming, where you're just like, here we are at the precipice, but it never is. It was like an insert shot of Fred, like typing on a computer as a character he'd never played before. It lacked any sense of sentimentality. And the thing that was beautiful about it was that our entire crew, even the people that were at the production office, had started to gather around. So as we looked up, and Jonathan Kreisel, our co-creator, and he was directing the last scene, and so it really felt like we had come full circle. And we looked up and we could see all these people who we worked with, some of them for 8 years. And so that was very special. But the scene itself was so arbitrary. It was almost ridiculous.
What was going through your head as that sort of final scene was wrapping?
Just a sense of accomplishment. And I think it really is hard to do something for 8 years. Not everyone is lucky enough to do a show, to do something that they love for that many seasons. And we certainly had not started out thinking or assuming that we would do the show beyond the first season. You just never know if there will be an audience for it, if critics will like it, if anything. You really, there's so much uncertainty. So I just think a sense of immense pride and fortune and just kind of bewilderment that we had sort of lasted. And you realize, like, you look around and you see people who when we started were single in their early 20s, and suddenly they have children. I mean, 8 years, it's nearly a decade of your life. That's a long period of time. So there's this sense of really traversing over, just years. And that is a very intense feeling. Just like, oh, this is what I've been doing for almost a decade. So it was a really wonderful feeling.
What do you think kept that show going for 8 years?
I think a true love of it, and a true affection for one another and for the process. Also, it was 10 episodes. It wasn't one of those shows where, we worked on it for 10 months and it was just this arduous writing process and an arduous filming process. I mean, there's always a difficulty. There's always, it can always be laborious, and it was, but we all reconvened in May to start writing with a real sense of optimism and wanting to kind of translate and understand the world through the lens of the show. It's a really unique lens through which to sort of interpret phenomena, whether it's interpersonal or political or cultural. So I think we, especially the writers, but also the actors and our guest stars, I think really relished that opportunity. Like, Portlandia, it's an interesting way of coming to an understanding of the world.
Yeah. And what do you think, what do you miss most about Portlandia?
Well, kind of speaking to what I was just talking about, there's so much chaos in the world at any given second or day. And I think I took for granted that I would have this opportunity year after year to get into a writer's room with smart, funny people and kind of process and rant and just dissect the ways of the world with people, even if it was just catharsis. But ideally, it was more than catharsis. Ideally, it was coming to some comprehension of what that meant, or what that meant for me as a person, or a director, writer, actor, or what that meant for a character. Like, how can we put this character through this situation that is relatable, and come to some kind of greater like awareness of what it means. That was a thing I really missed this year. It's just, you read the newspaper and you really want to be able to go into a room and say, how can we figure this out? How can we put a couple through this sort of stress or trauma or humor and actually make it absurd? Because sometimes I think absurdity is the only way to really make sense of anything that's happening right now. So that's what I miss the most. And just spending the summers in Portland, although I'm in Portland right now for another job. So, I guess I'm okay.
Yeah. Do you still see Fred much, or was Portlandia the way that you caught up with Fred?
Both. I think I definitely saw him more when I was working on the show, but Fred and I live within 5 minutes of each other in Los Angeles. So I do see him. I just saw him in the last week. So yeah, he's a dear friend. I think one of the things that made Portlandia special was that he and I were friends before the series. It was such a natural extension of our friendship and our connection. And so we'll always have that. So yeah, I still see him. He's a very busy guy, but we make an effort to hang out.
Yeah. What do you miss most about sort of being in the writer's room with him?
He has his grasp of character. His way into a sketch was always through character, trying to figure out what made someone tick, why, these sort of eccentricities or, idiosyncrasies about someone, and what made that. It wasn't about how can we make fun of that, but how can we sort of celebrate that? How can we get at the bottom of this, strange way of being or unique way of being in the world? And he's really great at pitching. There's a lot of people that have really funny ideas, but are terrible at sort of presenting them in the room. But Fred's almost the opposite. Like, he can sell you any idea because he's so funny in the pitch that only later you're like, wait, I don't even think that was a great idea. That was just a really funny bit that you did in the room. But he really is a very hilarious, very ingenious person. And I just miss that hilarity and that very singular perspective that he has on things. It was a great 8 years writing with him.
When you look back on your time at Portlandia, is there a particular moment that you are fond of, or that brings a smile to your face when you think of it? It could be a scene or just anything, really.
I think there's so many moments, and they often involved guest stars, and just how surreal it was sometimes to bring these people who had been influential in my youth, or even in my sort of current life, up to this small city in Oregon, and have them, create these characters and bring them to life. An example from the most recent season is the riot spray episode, where I had 3 sort of heroes of mine, where it was Chris Novoselic, who's the bass player from Nirvana, Henry Rollins from Black Flag and the Rollins Band, and Brendan Canty, who is the drummer in a punk band called Fugazi. And just they created this band with one of Fred's characters, Spike, and I could not believe that I was directing these 3 men who, all their bands were so important, not just to me, but to so many people. And the fact that they just had a sense of humor, a self-awareness about their legacy, were sort of willing to kind of explore, what it means to sort of age with outrage as the sort of fulcrum, and, how that changes over time. And then at the end of that episode, we had Terry Crews, who is just an amazing actor, an amazing human. And so that whole episode was so surreal. Just these, 4 sort of pillars of just integrity and inspiration. And I just thought, only on this show would those 4 people be in the same episode. And that's, I think, what was the most, what I'll remember about Portlandia is just bringing sort of disparate elements together that are very surprising. And I don't really know there's another context for that.
Yeah, and sort of fitting that would be the episode you're nominated for directing, with your work in the music industry as well, and your passion for music, and also sort of nice that, because Fred, I don't think I've ever interviewed Fred and him not gone on about in a good way about a band he's listening to or music that he's been inspired by.
Yeah, no, music is such a passion for the two of us, and I think so much of the way that we interpret the world is through music for Fred and I think for a lot of people, just a way of articulating a feeling when you yourself feel at a loss for words, a way of, defining a given moment, something that is definitive in our lives. Often we do that through music. And I think when we started Portlandia, it was so much, we thought about it season after season like albums. We thought of each season like an album. And so for the final, season to have these like really just, I don't know, just kind of legendary, incendiary musicians, I think was very fitting. It was a nice closure. And I think we just thought of even the editing and the pacing of the episodes with the musicality, editorially, we thought in terms of like percussiveness and punctuation. And I think that so much of the lens through which both Fred and I and Jonathan Kreisel, one of our co-creators, think of things is music. And so, it was fitting, and it was a good fit for me directorially to take the helm of that episode.
And I think with if you viewed each season as an album, if you were putting together a greatest hits, what would be the number 1 track?
Oh boy, that's so hard. I'll say one more episode, which is about a couple that becomes obsessed with a television show, Battlestar Galactica, and so obsessed that they lose their jobs and they forgo basically any other form of living except to watch this show. And when they realize that the final episode has aired and there's no more and they cannot feed this addiction, they seek out the creator of the show, Ronald D. Moore, and they beg him to write another episode. And why I would put that as the greatest hit of Portlandia, the first track, is just that it speaks to an optimism and a fandom. And I think so much of Portlandia was about acknowledging and speaking to things that Fred and I love and things that have motivated us and inspired us. And I think there is just such an optimism and curiosity and openness that comes with being a fan of something. And I think that sketch just spoke to that intention, which was just to not be mean-spirited, to approach something from a real genuine interest in it.
Oh, that's great. And Carrie, we might sort of start to wrap up now and sort of quit while we're ahead. We've got some stuff in the can that's good. But Carrie, thanks so much for chatting. And you were saying how Fred was the master of pitches. And I remember the first time I interviewed both of you together, I think, was the first time I talked to either of you. And I made some stupid line about washing dishes, and Fred turned that into this amazing pitch for your next comedy sketch project, which sort of, I guess, highlights his ability to be able to do that.
He has many abilities, and that is one of them. Very funny, yes. Always pitching.
Yeah, and it's been a pleasure to interview both of you over the course of Portlandia's run.
Well, I appreciate it. We've always appreciated talking to you and your support. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and it's the last year Portlandia can win Best Variety Sketch Series. This is your last.
It's the last chance that people have. It's the last chance. All right.
So, yeah, thanks so much, Carrie. It's been great, and all the best.
Thanks. Get some sleep. Bye.
I will. Bye. Hey.